reaction that I always want. Now, my personal view as a designer is that I always want that reaction, that emotion, to be positive. Surprise, a sense of happiness, a sense of satisfaction, glee. We use a variety of emotions in games. Certain obstacles may temporarily raise feelings of suspense, competition, even frustration. But we insert these elements because they are all in service of producing a new sensation that you may have never experienced before. And to the extent possible, I always want that final result, that final emotion, to be a positive one. That's what I always have in mind in creating my games. But of course, I understand that other designers work with other visions, other emotions, sometimes fear or horror, or revenge, or violence, and that's fine. There is no right or wrong in what feelings are triggered. All that's important is the final result that you want the player to experience. And I think that's up to you, how you do that. All I'm saying is that in my personal case, the feeling that I always strive for is a positive one. And so I keep this picture of the player's face in my mind until the very end of development. And if sometimes I feel our team has lost their way or lost sight of that image, or maybe somehow we're not going to elicit the entertainment that we desire, then I'm willing to take the risk and, as some people like to say, upend the tea table. But what I am doing really is just making sure that the game is as fun to play as possible. The thing is that we as game designers often repeat the same mistake. And that's because we're too familiar. We know too much about the games that we're making. We tend to forget that actual gamers will come into it not knowing anything about the games that we've been creating. And oftentimes that's how we continue to create our games, is without taking that into account. To put it more simply, when we're creating a game, we have to force ourselves to make the software purely from the viewpoint of the game player. In fact, I think this is the way that your vision will be most clearly conveyed to the players who play your games. So that's why I feel, if I feel so strongly, I feel this so strongly, that if I think we need to drastically change the spec or even delay a game, I'm willing to take that risk and upend the tea table. So everybody who works in this building here, which is our headquarters, when they hear my footsteps approaching towards the end of a project, they get very nervous. Well, that's what they say. I don't know if it's true. You'll have to go visit Mr. Aonuma this afternoon at his lecture and see what he has to say about it. For all I know, he may enjoy hearing my footsteps. So in any case, I believe that my vision of a happy player's face, the one that I try to imagine in every project, is also a good match for Nintendo. And I should say that I believe that these positive emotions are also effective in successfully expanding the audience of gamers to people who don't currently play. Because when they say someone in the household is experiencing joy, is having fun, and enjoying themselves, that's when they think, you know, maybe I want to pick up that controller and try this out myself. We've been seeing this a lot in Japan since we've released Wii Play. This is the American version here. The thing about this game is that initially it seems to be too elementary for core gamers. But what we've learned is that many core gamers find themselves enjoying Wii Play much like they have Wii Sports. And the reason for that is because they've found a new value in this kind of software. It's a game that they can play with their non-gaming friends. It's a game that they can use to invite those non-gamers into the world of entertainment, the form of entertainment that they enjoy so much. So maybe all you game reviewers out there need to add a new category on which you score games. How fun it is for people who don't play them. So let me now quickly discuss a few more aspects of my personal vision as a developer. Now, I often say that I am making games so that players themselves will become more creative. More specifically, the fact that the game players are encouraged to proactively think about what they're supposed to do within the game adds particular interest, both for them and for me. And to expand on this thought a bit further, in my mind, the core of this element is really communication. Now, of course, communication is a key topic, but as you all know, there are many wonderful and very popular games that have nothing to do with communication between players. Think of someone playing solitaire on a PC, or maybe playing Pac-Man in the arcades, or Tetris on a handheld. And I'm sure there are many other games that many of you have made as well. And these games are very popular because they provide a personal sense of enjoyment and fulfillment. Some people view Zelda as being part of this group, but when I created it, I had a different idea in mind. Some people think that this single-player game is one where you communicate only with the computer. But from the start, I thought that Zelda could create a different kind of communication centered around the game itself. And when I first showed an early prototype of the NES version of Zelda, it did not go over well in Japan. People were confused. They didn't know their objective. They didn't know how to move from stage to stage. They couldn't even solve the puzzles. And a lot of people said, look, why don't you just make one way through the dungeon, no multiple paths. But of course I ignored them all. Rather than making it easier for players to understand, I decided to take their sword away from the very beginning. If you do that, then you know what you have to do. See, I did this because I wanted to challenge them to find that sword. Because I knew that they would think about these problems. They would think before they go to sleep, how am I going to do this? Or maybe as they're riding to work in the morning. And at the same time, I wanted them to talk with other Zelda players and exchange information. Ask each other questions. Find out where to go next. Exchange information. That's what happened. This communication was not a competition, but it was a real-life collaboration that helped make the game more popular. Of course, back then, there were no chat rooms for people to trade ideas in. But still, players found ways to get a hold of each other and exchange information. Sometimes calling them up in the middle of the night, waking them up. And in this sense, Zelda became the inspiration for something very different. Animal Crossing. So this is a game based solely on communication and cooperation, and it's virtually without competition. And, as I said earlier, even my wife agreed to try it because it was designed to be friendly and non-threatening. And it bumped up the wifeometer once again. So our team was looking for elements that would make the player happy simply by moving their character around the game world. But the interesting thing was that Animal Crossing was also enjoyed by many who were hardcore gamers. So what I learned from this was that what gamers are looking for in games isn't necessarily always the best graphics, or better audio, or better production. And now worldwide, the Animal Crossing games have sold through to 7 million players. And they've invited quite a few new gamers into the forest. And of course, as I said earlier, it also bumped up the wifeometer. So the next part of game design that I'd like to talk about is prioritization. Now the complaint of every developer on every game ever made, I think, is the same. Not enough. Not enough people. Not enough budget. And not enough time. And of course, the more that we are dedicated to providing the maximum enjoyment for the players, the more that we have this feeling. And of course, it's natural for us to believe that to make people enjoy themselves, we need to add more gorgeous-looking graphics and more content to put into the game. We don't want the player to be disappointed with the decisions that we've made. And so, of course, as a developer, I don't want to disappoint people. So I often go to Mr. Iwata with these same complaints. And unfortunately, he usually responds the same way that I imagine your bosses probably respond. Too bad. But I think what he really means is that I need to use my head a little bit more. So let me tell you one story about how we applied prioritization for one project, the baseball game within Wii Sports. Now, I've been a big baseball fan since I was a child. So if ever there was a game that I would want to add realism to, it would be baseball. The thing is the Wii Sports baseball game has only one stadium. There's no licenses for real teams or players. You can't lay a bunt. You can't steal. You can't even control the fielders. And the games only last 3 innings. That's not very realistic at all. And then there's the characters. They're very unrealistic. They're based on a kind of traditional wooden doll in Japan that are given as souvenirs called kokeshi. So we called these characters kokeshi during development. Now I think this approach probably shocked a number of developers when we took it. But I mean, after all, these characters don't even have arms or legs. But and, you know, we had these concerns within Nintendo, but we agreed that our time could be better spent on finding other ways to make the game feel realistic. So we put all of our efforts into 2 elements, pitching and hitting. Because what we felt was that with the Wii Remote, we could create a new kind of realism that people have never experienced before. And at the same time, it would allow people who didn't understand the fundamentals of baseball, like bunting or throwing out a runner, to actually play and enjoy the game. Of course, I should say that at one point during development, we did try using Mario characters as an improvement on the Kokeshi style. But we found that even without arms or legs, people liked the Kokeshi style better. So these are how we came to these decisions. So it was only by applying this strict prioritization that we were able to complete this project on time. And I believe, in my opinion, to deliver a baseball game that can be enjoyed by everyone. You know, even now, after we've put it out and everybody's played it, many players are showing a great deal of surprise at how easy it is to play, and shocked that they can play it without even pressing a button. They all say, wow, even I can play this game.